Okay, what's going down, ladies and gents? So in this video, I'm going to be telling you people my top 5 most disappointing nations at the 2022 FIFA World Cup, So now that the knockouts are here, I thought I would just, compile a list of all the nations that I think were the most disappointing and or underperformed the most at the World Cup. So, let's just get right into this video, shall we? So I'm going to go all the way from number 1 to number 5. That's how we're going to do. So starting off with number 1, in my honest opinion, the most disappointing nation that's really underperformed at the World Cup, I'd have to say, would have to be Belgium, because especially, everybody thought that Belgium were going to make it out of the group stage. Nobody thought that Belgium were going to get grouped here and, basically, and not fail to make it out of the group stage. Like, nobody could have imagined this happening, but, with Belgium being knocked out of the group stage, it just goes to show you here that this is possibly the last of what we could see from players like Courtois, De Bruyne, Hazard, Lukaku, all key players for the Belgium national team, because they're obviously the main reason why Belgium even became a World Cup contender in 2018, was all because of them. And, a lot of it, I guess, has to do with Hazard's decline. Like, I definitely imagine that Hazard's decline as a footballer definitely played a key part in Belgium just not being the same team that they were in 2018, 4 years ago. So, it's going to be interesting to see how Belgium are going to go forward from here, because obviously I still imagine De Bruyne within the next 4 years is still going to maintain his form, and especially, I guess, players like Courtois. Well, it's hard to say, because Courtois had a pretty average showing at the World Cup, if I'm being honest here. But obviously for Hazard, Vertonghen, I think that this is the last of what we've seen from him. So yeah, number 1 on the list would definitely have to be Belgium. So now moving on to number 2 here. In my honest opinion, the second most disappointing nation at the World Cup would honestly have to be, I'm going to say, Serbia. Yeah, Serbia as the second most disappointing nation at the World Cup, because obviously you look at the Serbia football team, they have key players like Vlahovic, Mitrovic, Tadic, Milenkovic, Savic, and Kostic as well. So you thought that with that type of squad right there, plus, they got a great rising defender and Pavlovic, who I think is going to be a key player for the Serbia national team for many, many years to come. But I guess you could say that despite Serbia having all those players, a lot of people thought they were going to be the dark horse team at the World Cup. Well, obviously they got matched up in a pretty difficult group against two really good teams that they faced in 2018 in Brazil and in Switzerland, especially Switzerland. But safe to say, Serbia, they underperformed at the World Cup. Seriously, the way how I see it, I personally think that with the Serbia national team, the biggest issue I think that the Serbia national team is facing right now would probably just have to be them not having a good midfield like how Croatia do. Because obviously, here's the thing, man, a big reason why Croatia are doing better at the World Cup than Serbia are is because Croatia, they have a midfield. That's something Serbia don't have outside of Sergej Milenkovic-Savic, because if only Serbia would be able to have a playmaker type of midfielder that can complement Milenkovic-Savic, and if their midfield was as good as Croatia's is, then I guarantee you Serbia, they would boss their way in this group stage. I think they would have finished first in the group if only they had a midfield, because that's the biggest weak link on the Serbia national team. Plus, their defense is still pretty abysmal, because another factor with the Serbia national team is that if they wanted to do good in this group stage, they needed to have a good defender, like a type of defender that can be a rock in defense, like how Netherlands do with Van Dijk, Portugal do with Pepe. Unfortunately, Serbia doesn't have any of that, and that's another reason why I think they really underperformed at this year's World Cup. So yeah, that's the way how I see it, because Croatia, they don't even have the hottest striker names like how Serbia do, and Croatia, they still did better. You want to know why? Because of midfield. That's a key factor, and that's the reason why Croatia, I guess, have been more successful than Serbia have at the past 2 World Cups. So yeah, number 2 on the list would have to be Serbia. And as for number 3 on the list, I'm going to say probably Germany. Germany, they were still pretty disappointing at the World Cup, if I'm being honest here, because you look at the Germany national team, ever since they won that 2014 World Cup in Brazil, it seemed like that Germany's football team has really fallen off. And, the only player that I think performed, the players that I think performed really well for Germany at the World Cup would have to be Rudiger and Musiala. I think those are the only 2 good players that performed the best for the Germany national team out of any other player on that squad. So yeah, Germany, very disappointing, and this was probably Neuer's last and ever World Cup appearance. But even if he retires at this point, I mean, Neuer, I think he's still going to be around with Germany for Euro 2026, I believe. I mean 2024, sorry. Euro 2024. I still think he's going to be around. But obviously, you know, Neuer, I guess you could say he's also getting up there in age as well. And he had a nice run with Germany. He won the 2014 World Cup with them. You know, you can never forget that 2014 Germany World Cup team just absolutely bossed their way at the World Cup, you know, including that 7-1 battering of Brazil. Yeah, that's going to be the most shocking game result, the most shocking football result for me ever. Yeah, Germany, possibly the third most disappointing nation at the World Cup. And for number 4 on the list, I'm going to say Denmark. I'm going to add number 4 as Denmark, just because for Denmark, man, for a nation that's made it all the way to the Final Four at the Euros, especially, you know, after that whole Eriksen thing that happened against Finland, for Denmark to make it all the way to the Final Four at the Euros without Eriksen just goes to show you here that Denmark, on paper, they have the talent outside of Eriksen too. And everybody thought that this was going to be another promising World Cup for Denmark. But safe to say, Denmark, they've also been another team that has really disappointed at the World Cup. I don't know what happened with Denmark, but I guess you could say their football team massively underperformed as well. Despite having the likes of Christian Eriksen back in the squad, they unfortunately weren't able to be that same team they were at Euro 2020. And I guess you could say that a big reason for that is because just they massively underperformed, especially against Australia. Like Denmark, obviously the biggest issue with them is that their finishing was pretty abysmal, and I guess that's the main reason why Denmark failed to make it out of the group stage at the World Cup, was mainly because of that. Because for Denmark, in order for Denmark to actually be able to make it out of this group stage, they needed to really, I guess, work on their finishing. And I guess that's the main reason why Denmark, I guess you could say, failed to make it out of the group stage, was just that exact reason. But this is the way how I see it. So now for number 5 on the list here, I'm going to add Uruguay as the 5th most disappointing nation at the World Cup that really underperformed, just because obviously with Uruguay, they still had Suarez and Cavani. Even though they are clearly past their prime, they obviously have they still have other great talents like Nunez, Federico Valverde. So it looks like that Uruguay were going to be able to have a promising World Cup too, especially after the rising emergence of Valverde and how he's become a key player in Real Madrid's midfield. You thought that Uruguay, but unfortunately Uruguay, another team, especially with players like Nunez, who have really underperformed at this year's World Cup. I was absolutely shocked to see Uruguay fail to make it out of the group stage. But I guess you could say that Uruguay's football team is in a state of rebuilding at the moment. And it's going to be interesting how Uruguay can do moving forward with players like Nunez and Fede Valverde. But ladies and gents, that's pretty much it here with the video. So these are my top 5 most disappointing nations at the World Cup. So let me know if you agree with my list, or if you disagree with my list. Let me know why in the comments section below. And I guess like, comment, subscribe. See ya.